The rain hammered against the penthouse windows like bullets, each drop carrying the weight of Marcus Chen's sleepless nights. He stood in his corner office, watching the city blur into watercolor streaks 30 floors below, when something made him look down at the bus stop. Through the storm, he saw here a woman clutching two small children, all three huddled under a single newspaper that was already dissolving in the downpour. But it wasn't their obvious desperation that made his breath catch. It was the jacket she wore, a faded military green bomber with a distinctive patch he'd only seen once before, in a photograph that haunted his nightmares. Marcus Chen had built his empire from nothing, turning a small tech startup into a billion-dollar corporation that revolutionized emergency communication systems. At 42, he had everything money could buy, yet the hollow ache in his chest reminded him daily of what he'd lost. The penthouse felt more like a mausoleum than a home, filled with expensive furniture that no one sat on and gourmet meals that tasted like ash. Without thinking, he grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator. 20 minutes later, he was standing at the bus stop, rain soaking through his $1,000 suit as he approached the woman and her twins. "Excuse me," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. Up close, he could see she was younger than he'd first thought, maybe 28, with tired eyes that held a fierce protective fire. The children, a boy and a girl who couldn't have been more than 6, pressed closer to their mother as he approached. "I'm sorry, I don't have any change," she said quickly, her voice carrying the weight of someone who'd been disappointed too many times. "No, that's no." Marcus paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound condescending. "I was wondering if you'd like to get out of the rain. There's a coffee shop across the street." The woman's eyes narrowed with suspicion, and she pulled her children closer. "We're fine, thank you." But the little girl chose that moment to sneeze violently, and Marcus saw the mother's resolve crack just a fraction. He pulled out his business card, letting her see his name and title clearly. "I'm not asking for anything, just coffee." "It's cold, and your kids." She looked at the card, then at her shivering children, then back at Marcus. Something in his expression must have convinced her, because she nodded once, curtly. "Just coffee." The coffee shop was warm and bright, a stark contrast to the storm outside. Marcus bought them hot chocolate for the twins Emma and Jake, their mother finally revealed, and coffee for himself and the woman who introduced herself simply as Sarah Martinez. As the children warmed up, their natural curiosity emerged. Jake peppered Marcus with questions about his watch, while Emma shyly showed him her worn stuffed elephant. Sarah remained guarded, but Marcus noticed how she made sure the children ate every bite of the muffins he'd ordered, while barely touching her own food. "You don't have to tell me anything," Marcus said finally, "but I'd like to help if you let me." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "You want to help? Give me a job. I've got 2 degrees and 8 years of experience in logistics. But apparently being homeless makes you unemployable." "What kind of logistics?" "Military supply chain management. I coordinated relief efforts in." She stopped abruptly, her hand moving instinctively to her jacket. Marcus felt his world tilt. "Afghanistan." Her eyes snapped to his face, reading something there she hadn't expected. "How did you?" "The jacket," he said quietly. "That patch." "You were part of Operation Nightingale." Sarah's face went white. She stood abruptly, gathering her children. "We have to go." "Please, wait." Marcus rose too, his heart pounding. "My brother was there." "Staff Sergeant David Chen." "Communications." She froze, her hand on Emma's shoulder. When she turned back to him, her eyes were filled with recognition and something that looked like guilt. "David Chen." "He was. He saved 17 people that day." The coffee shop seemed to fade around them. Marcus found himself back in that horrible morning 2 years ago when the military officials had knocked on his door, telling him about the convoy that never made it home, about his little brother's sacrifice. "You were there," Marcus whispered. "When the convoy was hit." Sarah's composure cracked. "He gave me this jacket, said if anything happened to him, I should find his family. Tell them." She swallowed hard. "Tell them he died making sure we got home." The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared grief and unspoken understanding. Finally, Marcus spoke. "He talked about you in his letters. The logistics coordinator who always made sure the aid got to the right villages, who never gave up on people." Tears were streaming down Sarah's face now. "I tried to find you after I got back, after everything fell apart. But you were this big CEO and I couldn't figure out how to approach you. And then when my husband left, when we lost the house, I felt like such a failure. How could I face David's brother when I couldn't even take care of my own kids?" Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, to a loosening of the knot of grief and guilt he'd carried for 2 years. "You're not a failure. You survived. You brought your children home safe. That's what David would have wanted." Over the following weeks, Marcus learned Sarah's full story. How she'd returned from deployment to find her husband had emptied their bank accounts and filed for divorce. How the PTSD had made it hard to keep steady work. How she'd been too proud to ask for help until pride became a luxury she couldn't afford. He offered her a position heading up his company's new humanitarian logistics division, a role that would utilize her military experience to coordinate disaster relief efforts worldwide. But more than that, he offered her and the children a place in his life. Not charity, but family. The penthouse slowly transformed. Children's laughter echoed through rooms that had been silent for too long. Sarah's efficiency revolutionized not just the humanitarian division but brought a sense of purpose back to Marcus's work. Emma's drawings covered his refrigerator, and Jake's endless questions reminded him how to see wonder in everyday things. One evening, 6 months after that rainy day at the bus stop, Marcus found Sarah standing on the balcony, still wearing David's jacket. "He would have liked this," she said without turning around. Seeing his family together, Marcus joined her at the railing, looking out at the city lights. "I used to think I'd failed him by not being there. But you showed me something I'd forgotten, that sometimes the best way to honor someone's sacrifice is to live fully, to take care of the people they cared about." Sarah smiled, the first truly peaceful expression he'd seen from her. "Your brother saved my life that day, but you saved it again when you saw me at that bus stop. Not just mine, theirs too." "We saved each other," Marcus corrected gently. Below them, the city hummed with life. Millions of people pursuing their dreams, facing their struggles, finding their way home. And in the penthouse that had once been a monument to loneliness, a new family was writing their story together, bound not by blood but by choice, by love, and by the understanding that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as the greatest losses. The jacket still hung in Sarah's closet, a reminder of sacrifice and survival, but it was no longer a burden of guilt. It had become a bridge between past and future, a symbol of the connections that make us human and the kindness that makes us whole.